Hello my friends and welcome back to the channel. If I knew the root cause of addiction and alcoholism, I'd be a very rich man. However, what I do know is that the thing that drives most people's addiction and alcoholism, and certainly drove mine for many, many years, is pain and the self-medicating of that pain to ease it or to attempt to ease it. You know, and that pain can be emotional pain, it can be trauma from the past, it can be physical pain, all sorts of pain, whatever it is, from your childhood or whatever. And the attempt to self-medicate it over years and years and years can become habitual and, as I say, can form the basis of your addiction and your alcoholism. I know it did mine. It was essential for me to find the courage and the will to confront that pain and deal with it head on for me to continue with my recovery and to make my recovery stronger, to give it a firm base to build on. And it's the same for you, whatever that pain is. Just before I want to talk about my childhood experience and my genetics, if you like, in this video very quickly. But just before I do that, if my videos have helped you over the years or helped anyone you know, and you feel like you'd like to give a little support to the channel over Christmas, please take a moment to click on the Ko-fi link in the description. Have a quick read how you can do that, and I'd be eternally grateful. Thank you so much. I didn't have the happiest of childhoods, and for many years of addiction and alcoholism that followed, I blamed my childhood and my upbringing for my addiction and alcoholism. It was always there as an excuse to drink. And there was also something I found out in my 20s, which was always there and definitely had an influencing factor. And that was my real granddad committed suicide with a shotgun in a hotel bedroom. And I didn't find this out till my late 20s. So obviously, apart from my childhood, there was also some sort of genetics involved, certainly with my depression and my anxiety, which I still have to manage now, day to day. It's still there in the background. You know, I inherited something from my bloodline, if you like. And I didn't find that out till my 20s, so that was quite a revelation for me. But when I did find that out, I was able to, you know, address it, if you like. My childhood, I was born into what you would call a middle-class suburban family, if you like, on the Wirral in Merseyside in Liverpool. My mother was a physiotherapist, my father was a bank manager, one brother a couple of years younger. It wasn't a good childhood. For the first, and the childhood, let's face it, those first 7 years at least, but probably first 10 years, you're soaking things up like a sponge. You know, you're soaking up any trauma, you're forming all your opinions, you're learning how to react to certain situations, your emotions are being formed, all sorts of stuff is happening to you in those years. Unconsciously most of the time. It wasn't a happy marriage. There were violent arguments all the time. I remember we had bunk beds, me and my brother. We used to sneak into each other's bunk beds at night when the arguments became violent. I remember that distinctly from a very, very young age. And up to, I think it was around about, this went on and on and on. My father was a very unpleasant, selfish man, and you know, when I was around 7 or 8, I think it was, he just, one day we'd been out, me, my mother and my brother, came back home and he just disappeared, emptied the wardrobe, left a note, which we never read, and we never saw him again for the rest of our lives. Basically just disappeared. I remember my mother absolutely destroyed her, collapsed. She never stopped loving my father. She's actually buried in the wedding ring still. she turned to vodka and pills, basically. To cut a long story short, I was very angry with her for many years, but I look back now and she was struggling, and she did her best to bring up two boys. Because in those days, things were different around the divorce laws, and he sent, when he did send money, it was an absolute pittance. He'd met another woman, it turned out, had a family with her. My mum made him wait 5 years for a divorce. During that period, the money that he sent was sporadic at the best, and we really, really struggled. We would come home from school, me and my brother, and my mother would be slumped over the sink, almost semi-comatose. She was on Librium, and there was vodka hidden all over the house. And to a certain extent, if it hadn't been for my nana, who chipped in and helped bring us up, I don't really know what would have happened. But me and my brother were sort of self-sufficient, bringing ourselves up to a certain extent. And because we didn't have much money during that period, our clothes were all secondhand, and had no confidence. Self-esteem was rock bottom. I was very afraid and worried and fearful all the time. In social anxiety, I was a very lonely child. Didn't like to, and this was all stemmed from this, if you like. Didn't like to mix with anyone, was afraid of people. And when I went to school, I became an easy target for the bullies. And I was mercilessly, I can't even say it, severely, I'll say, bullied for quite a lot of years. And again, my confidence, what that did to my confidence and my self-esteem and my self-worth, it destroyed it, basically. And when I got to my teens, I discovered alcohol. And what I found from alcohol and the pills I stole from my mother was that all of a sudden, magically, they gave me confidence, if you like. All that fear and worry and lack of self-worth and lack of self-esteem. And what I did, I gravitated towards a bad crowd of individuals, the bad boys. This is why by the time I got to college, I was mixing in bad circles, and I was the one that was doing all the crazy things, the madman, if you like. Because I just wanted to be accepted. I was lonely, and I found that if I drank, that gave me the confidence to do the stupid stuff and become accepted by a group and blend in, if you like. And for the rest of my sort of 20s and onwards, I mean, I was quite lucky because I was sort of drinking from them days, although I didn't see it as any sort of problem in my 20s. And I sort of fell out of college and into the nightclub business, which I was, funnily enough, I just had a talent for, and I was very successful very quickly in my early 20s. I was running big nightclubs, crazy really when you think about it. And I lived a very, very hedonistic lifestyle, still using alcohol and drugs to self-medicate that pain, hiding from those emotions and that fear and that worry and that anxiety, which I blamed my childhood. I blamed on my childhood. And when I did that, I was extremely successful. The more I did that, the more successful I got. It was almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy. It was weird. I didn't see it as any sort of problem. I just saw it as part of the lifestyle that a nightclub manager lived. I suppose to a certain extent it was. And I was using a lot of cocaine in those days as well. So no one really ever saw me drunk. I was high and I'm drinking constantly. Wasn't married or I didn't have a family in those days. I won't go on to my 30s when I met my wife, but what I'm saying is everything that I was doing then, that self-medicating, sort of stemmed from the program, if you like, mental program that I received in my childhood. You're not good enough. You'll never amount to anything. Because that's what the teachers used to say to me as well. Because I was bullied at school, academically, I was in the wrong crowd. I just didn't give a shit. You know, you'll never achieve anything. You'll never do this. You'll never do that. You look like shit. You know, and when you're bullied, your self-worth and your self-esteem is down the pan. Confidence is down the pan. So for me to get all those things going and to achieve them, I was taking alcohol and drugs as a sort of medicine, if you like, and they were the answer to all those issues, all those feelings, all those emotions, that pain from the past. So when it came, and I carried this all through my life. You know, it was always there as an excuse. I look back now and I think, you know, I certainly don't blame my mum. My mum I look back, you know, I think I was a bit blinkered really, because there were certain times my mum did an amazing job with us really, considering what she had to do it with. You know, and who am I to talk? Because I went through exactly the same thing, you know, with my kids. You know, I was using drugs and alcohol when my kids were in younger in their teens. You know, I'm putting them through exactly the same sort of stuff as what I thought my mum had put me through. And she was just medicating her own pain. So the first thing I did was forgive my mum, because I had nothing to forgive her for really. She was just doing the best she could. And so I had to address that. And I had to understand that none of what happened to me in my childhood was my fault. And of course it wasn't. It wasn't mine or my brother's fault. Or if it was anyone's fault, it was my father's. But then I don't know his story. I don't know what drove him, because I never had a chance to speak to him about it. What drove him away from my mother into the arms of this other woman. So I had to let him go as well, and let that resentment and let that anger go as well, and that trauma from my past, and just understand it was what it was. You know, perhaps no one was to blame, and that's how I addressed it. And for a certain amount of time, I had to have a little bit of professional help with that, just to talk through it, and before I could let it go. And it's very rare I think about it these days. Although when I look at some of the inner child, because that inner child is always there, screams in my ear sometimes, I just have to ignore it, or him, and go with my gut and my heart. I know what's right and what's the right thing to do. When the inner child screams, it just wants attention. So I just have to tell it to shut up sometimes, because you can't help that sometimes. Now, some of you out there will have been through much worse trauma than me, God forbid. And you're going to need to address that by getting some sort of help with it, professional help with it. Sometimes that's what you need to do. But before you can progress into recovery, you have to address any pain you're self-medicating. You really do. You have to confront it, find the courage to confront it, talk about it with someone and address it before you can move on and get stronger and better. I hope that's been of some help to you. It's good to talk. It's good to get it off your chest. Even me talking about it in this video helps me just get it off my chest if I've been thinking about it for any reason. So Carpe Diem, seize the day today. Please click on the Ko-fi link. Please subscribe. Have a great day. Much love to you all. Bye-bye.